I am an ailing alpha, harboring feelings solely for other alphas. More specifically, my affections are directed exclusively towards my younger brother, Wong. Like a thief, I stealthily invade his room, rummaging through his shirts, greedily inhaling the lingering scent of his pheromones. I then clamber onto his bed, pretending to fall into a deep slumber in his embrace, indulging in a night filled with sweet dreams. Upon awakening, I discover that Wong has returned, pinning me beneath him, his canines lightly grazing the nape of my neck. "Do you desire my pheromones, brother?" he inquires. "You could have simply said so that it has been 7 days since Wong last graced our home. Such an absence has prompted even the butler to voice his concerns before me. What shall we do about the second young master's impending birthday? In truth, there are still 28 days remaining until he turns 22. I take a sip of wine, its bitterness irking my heart. As per usual, I reply dismissively. After all, what else is there but to invite a few rascally friends? Is that not how Wong operates? Ever since childhood, he has been a carefree rogue, leveraging his status as a top-tier alpha to instigate considerable trouble, with a line of people outside our residence seeking my guidance. 7 days prior, a feeble Omega had the audacity to visit my office, tearfully accusing Wong of coercion. Enraged, I pointed an accusatory finger at Wong, chastising him. "Stop using your wealth and that wretched pheromone of yours to bully others. I have a multitude of matters to attend to at the company, and you are no longer a child. Cease this incessant need for me to clean up your mess." And how did Wong respond? He merely raised an eyebrow, unabashedly retorting, "Wretched pheromone? Are you certain?" His words rendered me speechless. Wong's pheromones are a bold, spicy tequila scent, and he himself is akin to a powder keg, ready to explode at the slightest provocation. Others often remark on our family's good fortune, asserting that with 2 sons as top-tier alphas, the Jean family is destined for even greater heights. Indeed he is, but I am not. What alpha in their right mind possesses a lemony scent? Thus, Wong frequently utilizes this to keep me in check. Alphas are inherently incompatible with one another. Fortunately, as the elder brother, I can still manage to hold my ground against him. Our encounter concluded on a sour note, with him declaring, "If you wish for my return, you must personally plead for it." He has been gone for 7 days, 7 days without a sight of him. Yet, each morning, my secretary dutifully reports on Wong's whereabouts. I am aware of his reckless escapades, racing against others and shattering records on the winding mountain roads, all while being affectionately referred to as Wong-gu. I ponder this title repeatedly, realizing that he has indeed forgotten his brother, exhibiting a lack of conscience. Yet my fingers, betraying my will, reach for a photograph. Wong's figure is striking, his rebellious visage radiating an untamed fervor, reminiscent of the figure that haunts my dreams each night that I close my eyes and exhale a sigh. Perhaps I was unsettled by the butler's words. When I regain my senses, I find myself in Wong's room. He forbids anyone from entering his sanctuary, and thus the space cannot be described as tidy. Clothes are haphazardly strewn across the bed, and my gaze inadvertently falls upon some intimate garments. I pause, my face flushing, and quickly avert my eyes. Rationality admonishes me to leave immediately, yet my feet feel as though they are burdened by 1,000 pounds. The faint scent of tequila lingers in the air, subtly entwining itself around me, effortlessly evoking another layer of lemon fragrance. It is only when the lemon aroma has completely eclipsed the tequila that I belatedly comprehend what has transpired. 2. Indeed, I am afflicted by a peculiar ailment. I find myself utterly devoid of interest, save for one singular sensation. To be precise, I am only captivated by Wong. When he was 16, he played truant and I punished him by making him kneel. He rebelled against this, releasing his pheromones in defiance. At that time, he had yet to fully mature, and I was not at a disadvantage. However, it wasn't long before I experienced an unusual feeling. It was not a mere competitive spirit between kindred souls, but rather an impulsive desire to draw near to him, to close the distance, to bite him, to leave my scent upon him. I was taken aback and quickly realized that something was amiss. I hastily scolded him a few times before making an excuse to leave. Subsequently, I delved into extensive research and discovered a notion that those who are incomplete might be drawn to their kind. It was then that I understood the extent of my affliction. I sought out others, yet felt nothing. Undeterred, I began to search for more, which nearly led to a physical altercation. The individuals I had hired to assist me kept apologizing. "My apologies, Mr. Jean." I lost control for a moment. His expression was peculiar, perhaps pondering why I, an eccentric, would spend money to engage in such pursuits rather than simply revel in pheromones. I found myself ensconced in the sofa, motionless, my gaze fixed upon the floor. I knew I was doomed. I yearned for my own brother. From that day forward, I resolved to maintain my distance from Wong. Initially, it was manageable. As long as there was no physical contact, I could maintain control. After all, I was an adult capable of regulating my pheromones, at least that was the expectation. However, Wong had a peculiar habit when he bathed, filling the entire bathroom with the overwhelming scent of his pheromones. The aroma was so potent that I could sense it even from the adjacent room, humid and cloying. I stormed into his room, shouting through the bathroom door, "Do you not care about the cost of your pheromones? We have guests in the house. Control yourself." Wong emerged with his head covered in soap bubbles, innocently blinking his eyes. "Brother, but they are all." The next moment he seemed to realize, "Oh, have you been troubled by many issues at the company lately? I won't provoke you anymore. Please don't be irate." He retreated, and indeed he complied. I took a deep breath and, feeling utterly pathetic, returned to my own room, but I too entered the bathroom. Later, Wong sulked, accusing me of being petty. "Brother, I have already restrained myself. Why do you release such potent pheromones? It's fortunate I managed to control myself. Otherwise, what if we had fought?" He believed I was competing with him. I gazed into his innocent eyes, wishing to devour him whole. Yet, in that moment I inhaled deeply, seeking to capture the unique scent of Wong, but to no avail. His scent, having faded over the course of 7 days, lingered only due to its exceptional quality. A surge of unnameable anger welled within me. My feet, which intended to retreat, instead resolutely moved toward his wardrobe. Scanning the area, my eyes fixated on a white shirt. I swiftly seized it, akin to a thief, and left with a sense of misguided bravado. Just as my hand touched the doorknob, I hesitated, suddenly reluctant to depart. I had long harbored thoughts of another realm. The string of rationality had long since snapped, and I succumbed to my desires, boldly lying upon Wong's bed. The linens were identical, yet Wong's pillow seemed undeniably more comfortable. The quilt was warmer too. His clothes bore a more delightful scent. I clutched Wong's white shirt tightly, burying my face in its collar. Everything he used retained his pheromones as a mark of possession, which proved convenient for me. Even the faintest trace would suffice. With satisfaction, I closed my eyes and drifted into a deep slumber. In my dreams, I saw the 16-year-old Wong, crying outside my closed door, "Brother, please don't ignore me. I was wrong. I shall never skip school again. Someone said that once you marry, you will abandon me, which is why I didn't want you to go on dates. Please forgive me. Brother, open the door and look at me. I truly regret it. Indeed, I had been preparing to go on a blind date that day when I was struck with panic upon hearing he had skipped school and vanished. Ultimately, he was unharmed, while I was the one who had been unsettled. I concealed myself within my room. However, when Wong was distressed, his pheromones could not be contained, surging forth. It was the first time, and my desires nearly overwhelmed me. 3. I slept soundly, an unusual occurrence devoid of insomnia. Upon opening my eyes, I was greeted by the soft dawn light, the sunlight streaming in painfully, causing my eyes to sting. I forgot to draw the curtains. Last night, I had indulged in drink and thievery, neglecting even to close the curtains. My mind felt foggy. Yet, in the next moment, a weight seemed to press heavily upon me, and before I could recover from this burden, a sharp pain shot through my neck. The pheromones reacted before I could. 2 distinct scents clashed violently in the air. I forcefully rolled over the person atop me, quickly adjusting my collar and stepping back, shouting, "What are you doing?" My voice was somewhat hoarse. This was not a trivial matter. The peril lay in my unsteady breath, which I struggled to steady. Wong stared at me, momentarily stunned, before turning his back as he got out of bed. I was momentarily confused. "I apologize, brother, it was not my intention to hurt you." Indeed, it was clear that we were incompatible. He was willing to bite even his own brother. However, ouch. I touched the back of my neck, discovering I had drawn blood. That rascal had bitten down hard. Thankfully, he had not struck the gland. Otherwise, both of us would have faced dire consequences. Should I lose control and act upon my urges, I would have no choice but to end my own life to assert my resolve. The atmosphere grew tense, and looking at his back, another surge of unnameable anger arose within me. "Turn around." Wong complied. He had already dutifully restrained his pheromones, but then suddenly asked, "Brother, do you desire my pheromones? You could have mentioned it sooner." As I pondered how to fabricate an excuse to deflect, I heard Wong speak with a hint of jealousy. "Is Fong Li still conducting that ridiculous experiment? Is he relying on you to collect my pheromones? Fong Li was my childhood friend, sweet and charming. Yet he had imprisoned Wong's kind for experimentation using their pheromones. I seized upon this topic. Feigning sternness, you ought to show him more respect. He should be addressed as Brother Fong. Jin Wong suddenly perked up. Humph. What Brother Fong? Why are you so protective of him, sister-in-law? When he uttered the words sister-in-law, he emphasized them, his eyes seemingly ablaze. Our parents had passed away, and I had nearly raised him single-handedly. He lacked security and often felt that once I had someone, I would abandon him. Yet, this very rationale had allowed me to decline numerous blind dates over the years. Enough, stop with the nonsense. By the way, weren't you supposed to return only if I begged you? My tone betrayed a lightness I had not even realized. Jin Wong was back, and my heart felt settled. Those photographs, no matter how many times I had touched them, could not compare to him standing alive before me. Jin Wong's expression shifted to one of confusion. Brother, are you sure you didn't teabag me? Why are you wearing my clothes? For Jin Wong's question was utterly perplexing, yet I had no genuine desire to inquire. The important thing was that he had returned. As for my inability to resist wearing his shirt last night, I had no intention of explaining myself. After all, it was my money. What was the harm in wearing an article of clothing? My social engagements became considerably more pleasant, and even my secretary teased, Mr. Jean, you finally smiled. A few days ago I was terrified of saying the wrong thing, fearing you might fire me. This was a gross misrepresentation. I was not that careless a boss. I was merely a brother concerned for his younger sibling, and he ought to understand that. In the private room, amidst the clinking of glasses and the enchanting glow of lights, I had indulged in a few drinks with my partners, leaving my head slightly throbbing. However, I was taken aback when they decided to bring someone in. A row of bashful figures stood before me, each one shy and timid, some even donning cat ears as playful props. In the ruthless arena of business, where propriety often takes a back seat, they hastily selected their preferences to take away. I remained unmoved. One of them teased, President Jean, your refined demeanor makes us seem rather unscrupulous. Nonsense, I thought, what distinguishes you from lustful beasts? Yet, I stubbornly stayed put until my gaze fell upon a pair of eyes. They were so clear and innocent, and as I looked closer, I discerned a face strikingly similar to Jin Wong's. However, this visage was softer, lacking the bold and reckless aura that Jin Wong exuded. This individual, now cowering in a corner, anxiously awaited selection. As a drunken patron reached out to encircle his waist, I swiftly intervened, pulling him over. I want him. The one who had been interrupted bore no grievance, merely laughing as he chose another. Very good taste, President Jean. This one looks quite tender. I led my chosen companion to my resting quarters, realizing I needed to recuperate from the excesses of the evening. As soon as I lay down, the young one approached timidly, nervously asking, President Jean, how would you like to proceed? His eyes were filled with anxiety, fear, and a desire to please. My irritation grew. Despite the striking resemblance, how could there be such a vast difference? Why did he have to be so subservient? Subservient to the point that even if I were to mark him now, he would accept it willingly. He bore the same face, yet he was not the one who was inherently compatible with me. Why did I look at this face and think of another? You should go sleep in another room and not disturb me. I felt no impulse or interest in marking him. I simply wished to prevent this face from pleading for affection from someone else. Perhaps my tone was a touch brusque, for the young man trembled, visibly frightened. I sighed, resigned to my fate, wrapping him in a blanket to shield his partially exposed body. I spoke as gently as I could. Don't be afraid, just go to another room, all right? Rest assured, I won't let anyone make things difficult for you. They too were merely individuals hired by the employer, essentially pitiful beings. As I contemplated who had sent for him, I was suddenly met with a quivering voice. But the second young master said, if I am not marked by you tonight, he won't let me off. The young man appeared on the verge of tears. I was taken aback, a key phrase echoing in my mind. Second young master? Which one? Confusion mingled with a vague sense of anticipation and irritation. Jean Airshow. With a sharp crack, a string in my mind snapped. The only person who could instill such fear in others by the name Jean Airshow was that reckless scoundrel of mine. But, did he intentionally send this person? What was he up to? No, clearly, tonight's guests were not summoned by him, so what was the meaning of this? Everything was in disarray. My thoughts tangled as Jin Wong's image knotted my mind. How did he come to send someone like this? Did he know of my sordid desires? Sweat broke out on my brow, and I felt utterly bewildered. The pheromones began to surge wildly in the room, overwhelming the young man, who struggled to breathe, kneeling at my feet, exposing his delicate, pale neck. His pheromones began to seep out, soft and sweet, like a hint of milk candy. He resembled a plump, tempting fruit, awaiting my indulgence. My rationality began to fade, replaced by an impulsive agitation. I felt a conflicting urge to cast him away and to draw another closer. In a final burst of determination, I seized the trembling figure before me, forcefully guiding him toward the door, suppressing my anger. You should leave. Do not worry about any retaliation. He quivered, yet hesitated to open the door. In exasperation, I swung it open and beheld a familiar silhouette awaiting me outside. A visage akin to the young man's, yet radiating a completely different aura. My preferred Jean Wong. Jean Wong stepped aside, gesturing amiably, "Let us go." I found myself inexplicably relieved. For some reason, although this young man was sent by Jean Wong, I felt a twinge of guilt. I struggled to articulate, "I do not have a habit of marking others indiscriminately." It was not due to any other reason. "You are being quite reckless." Jean Wong chuckled, retorting, "Reckless? Are you certain it is I who is being reckless? Of course it was you, was it not?" Suddenly, Jean Wong frowned. "Why do you smell of pheromones so strongly? Have you lost control?" I belatedly realized that the room was suffused with a lemony scent, tart and bitter, much like my feelings for Jean Wong. Yet, there he stood before me, and at that moment, I felt as though perhaps I could truly be with him. Being drawn to someone is a malady. I had long succumbed to its depths, beyond remedy. All I wished was to embrace the person before me, to envelop him in my scent. I thought it, and then I acted upon it. As I held Jean Wong tightly, I felt the rhythm of his heartbeat where our skin met. Jean Wong sighed softly, "Indeed, you've become quite muddled." Suddenly, a sharp pain surged through my arm, akin to a needle piercing my skin. Then, my consciousness shattered, and I sank into a deep slumber, only to recall falling into a warm embrace. When I awoke, I found myself in Fong Li's laboratory. The harsh glare of fluorescent lights throbbed painfully in my head. "Fong Li, can't you switch to a different light? How many times must I tell you not to skimp on me?" I was startled by my own hoarse voice, my chest feeling heavy. Fong Li, busy preparing a potion, casually replied, Yes, I'll change it later. Of course, I won't skimp on you. How many times have I saved you?" This was indeed true. Fong Li was the only one aware of my attraction to Jean Wong. Times, when my pheromones spiraled out of control due to Jean Wong's presence, it was Fong Li's concoctions that kept me in check. Fong Li often teased, "It seems you both are not without flaws." But why was I here? I could only recall taking someone to my room to rest, feeling a touch agitated. And then what happened next? Once Fong Li finished his tasks, noticing my troubled expression, he laughed. "Oh, President Jean, have you lost your memory?" He shook the vial in his hand, muttering to himself, "Surely this medicine doesn't have that effect." Medicine? Suddenly, I recalled the sharp pain in my arm and hastily rolled up my sleeve to reveal a puncture mark. What is the meaning of this? Why would Jean Wong inject something into me? No, why would he bring me here? "Oh, you lost control of your pheromones last night. It was quite severe, leading to hallucinations, and you even called out for Jean Wong. To avoid anyone noticing, I administered some medicine and brought you back. No need to thank me, just pay me more." I was slow to process his words, digesting them for a while before a sense of disappointment washed over me. Turned out it was not Jean Wong after all. Then, rationality returned, and I shook my head in self-mockery. Thank goodness it was not Jean Wong. Fong Li, witnessing my current state, could no longer bear to watch and remarked, "Is it truly that you are so enamored?" He pressed, "If you feel such affection, why can't you express it?" His words carried a hint of compassion. In the years past, when the medication was not as effective, I would often find myself lost in reverie for long stretches, staring at a photograph of Jean Wong after each bout of losing control. Fong Li had observed all of this. Yet I shook my head. I cannot. I am his brother. I cannot bring him harm. Our parents had passed away when I was 12, and Jean Wong was merely 6. I had raised him single-handedly, nurturing him into the audacious second young Master Jean, who should live his life with unbridled confidence and charm. If I ever reach a point of losing control, and Jean Wong assumes authority, please support him. Fong Li, no longer in a mood for argument, waved me off, saying, Go on, don't hinder my experiments." Just as I was about to exit, Fong Li's voice echoed from behind, "Jean Huayan, have you ever considered that perhaps Jean Wong might harbor feelings for you as well?" I remained silent, for such a notion was unfathomable. I was well aware that Jean Wong preferred those soft and delicate. I had even cleaned up after numerous of his messes. However, voicing such an impossible thought was too cruel for me. Upon returning home, the first sight that greeted me was Jean Wong, sitting upright on the sofa. This time, he was the genuine article. As a child, whenever he made a mistake, he would feign seriousness, while his eyes would dart around, clearly not harboring noble intentions. Yet this time he had indeed committed a grave error. I maintained a stern demeanor, and Jean Wong, sensing the gravity of the situation, anxiously inquired, "Brother, are you all right?" I remained mute and ascended the stairs. Jean Wong hurriedly followed me to my door, showering me with countless pleas. Finally, I cut him off, saying, "Do not pester me. Go reflect in the study." He braced himself against the door I was about to shut. His once pleasing expression vanished, replaced by one of grievance. "Brother, I was wrong. What did you err at? If he wouldn't reflect in the study, then he could at least express his remorse in front of me. I shouldn't have gone street racing. I shouldn't have relied on my pheromones to engage in fights. I shouldn't have caused you so much trouble. I shouldn't have, for the first time, I witnessed someone reflecting on their actions and digging up their past mistakes, yet he failed to mention last night." I found it tedious and brushed aside his hand, preparing to close the door. His last words erupted from his throat. "I shouldn't have brought you that." The mere mention of this matter ignited both anger and fear within me. However, upon seeing Jean Wong's ready for anything expression, my tone softened. "Do not engage in such foolishness again. Even when I start a family, I will still care for you." Jean Wong's face fell. I hastily added, "Moreover, I have no such intentions in the coming years. You needn't worry." I had come to realize that the reason he brought me that was merely to ensure he had someone close by, so I wouldn't forget him once I found someone else. I am his brother. I can tolerate this little misstep. As for his resemblance to me, it was merely a means to capture my attention. It was quite a feat for him to devise such a plan. Yet, Jean Wong's expression did not lighten. Rather, it grew more somber. "Brother, do you truly have no such intention?" "No." With this response, Jean Wong took his leave, albeit with an unsatisfactory expression. That night, I lay in bed, tossing and turning, pondering how to send him something he would cherish to lift his spirits. Yet, the more I thought about it, the more elusive sleep became. Even when the butler brought me some calming medication, it proved ineffective. I experienced a restless night filled with bizarre fragments of dreams. Uncharacteristically, I repeatedly dreamt of indulging in drinks with others. The revelry was extravagant, with salt sprinkled on a person's collarbone, then kissing them while rolling it on my tongue, followed by a shot of tequila, and finally sealing it with a kiss, swallowing the lemon they had bitten. The mingling of flavors was exhilarating. I could not help but sigh in delight. However, upon looking at that person's face, I was jolted to realize it was Jean Wong's countenance. Suddenly, I awoke, the morning light streaming in. I sat on the edge of my bed, unable to calm my racing heart. The heat radiating from my body signified that I was genuinely unwell. Seeking Fong Li's assistance to treat my ailment, I learned that it was merely due to overexertion, unconnected to my pheromones spiraling out of control. I let out a sigh of relief. Yet, Fong Li became more severe, admonishing me. "Even if you are unwell, you must prioritize rest. Even iron cannot withstand such strain, especially considering you have been suppressing it with medication for years. You must learn to relax appropriately." After contemplating, I realized he was correct. However, what about the company? The vast family business would falter without my support. At that moment, Jean Wong stepped forth. "Brother, I will handle the company's affairs. You should take the time to rest."
Yin Wang handling matters.
My first instinct was disbelief. Then, I sensed the air filled with a commanding tequila aroma. I suddenly recognized that Jean Wong had matured. The child who once clamored for my embrace had grown into a formidable figure capable of shielding me from adversity. "Very well, do your utmost. At worst, I could seek assistance from others." Remarkably, Jean Wong handled things with an unexpected steadiness. When I discreetly inquired about him from the secretary, even they couldn't help but praise, "Young Master Jean manages affairs with the style of the elder Jean." I was thoroughly reassured, casting aside my worries and contemplating how to celebrate Jean Wong's birthday. I spent the night crafting 12 different plans, laying them on Jean Wong's desk. "Pick one, and let us see which you prefer. If you dislike these, that's fine too. Just tell me what you want, and I will arrange it for you," I offered. Jean Wong, without even glancing up, brushed the proposals aside and uttered 2 words. "Not doing it." Not doing it? How could that be? Jean Wong relished lively gatherings. Although the friends he invited were often unsavory characters in my eyes, they brought him genuine joy, so a celebration was essential. I blocked his view of the screen, asserting, "No, you've been too busy these days. You must also prioritize your rest." I contemplated returning to the company to take over. I was merely ill, not incapacitated, So why should my brother exert himself so? Jean Wong leaned back, crossing his arms and raising an eyebrow. I have plans. You needn't worry, brother. Observing his confident demeanor, I sensed something amiss. Reflecting on his recent commendable performance at the company, I suddenly realized that this was the gratifying realization that my little brother had finally grown up. I casually praised, "You've been doing well lately. Many have praised you." Jean Wong's lips curled into a slight smile. "I learned from brother." I chuckled. "Nonsense. When did I ever teach you these things?" In truth, I had attempted to guide him. When he turned 18, I brought him into the company to cultivate him. However, he was restless, eager for excitement, often wandering off to play. I had resigned myself to my fate as a diligent older brother. Yet soon I understood. As his brother, it was my duty to shield him from life's tempests. Jean Wong deserved to be the freest person in the world. But now, Jean Wong was staring intently at me, stubbornly asserting, "It was indeed brother who taught me." All right, it was I who taught you. We share the same blood, and our essences are alike. Growing up in my shadow, it could indeed be considered my teaching. I felt elated. Since you have your plans, then let them come to fruition. The night before Jean Wong's birthday, he returned home early. I have long pondered what he intends to do, as not a whisper has emerged regarding his plans. Could it be that everyone will simply gather at some random location tomorrow? Jean Wong headed straight back to his room and, after an hour, descended the stairs impeccably dressed. The collar of his shirt was slightly too open, revealing a delicate expanse of his fair collarbone. I gazed for a few seconds before discreetly averting my eyes. Jean Wong expressed surprise, then retraced his steps to fetch a chain for his collarbone, fastening it with satisfaction as he turned to me and said, "I almost forgot this. I'm ready, brother. Let us set off." He spoke mysteriously, claiming he wanted to take me somewhere. Unable to contain my curiosity, I asked, "Are we going to see the decorations for your birthday party tomorrow?" Though I had promised myself not to worry, how could I not be concerned about his affairs? He nodded and murmured, then fell silent. No matter how I tried to probe, he would not speak. I surrendered to silence, gazing out at the swiftly passing nightscape. Yet the road felt increasingly familiar. Jean Wong brought me to the winding mountain road where we often raced, stopping at the starting point. He exited the car, tapping on my window, "Brother, step out." I didn't understand but complied. The night air was icy. As I locked eyes with Jean Wong, neither of us spoke, our gazes filled with unspoken emotions. I feared that if I stared too long, my pheromones might betray me, so I capitulated and reached for the car door. "Let us go back. It's too late." Jean Wong firmly grasped my hand that rested on the door. "Brother, let us race." His tone carried a seriousness I had never witnessed before. "Race for what?" I laughed. "This is madness. I've never agreed to your reckless driving, and now you want to challenge me? Do you underestimate me?" I evaded the topic, anxiety gnawing at me. I sensed Jean Wong was about to say something, yet I dared not contemplate it. However, he interrupted my thoughts, stubbornly insisting, "Brother, just one race." I had always found it hard to deny him, so I relented. "Fine, let us race. But don't underestimate me. I was quite the speedster in my day." Once the car revved to life, a thrill surged within me. At his age, I too craved excitement, often clandestinely racing under the cover of night. In a moment of exhilaration, I pushed the speed to its limits. The scenery whirled past, and my exhilaration peaked. Suddenly, I felt a twinge of worry. Jean Wong was beside me. What if he couldn't handle the speed? Then I chuckled at my own overthinking. After all, Jean Wong had recently shattered the record on this very road. Yet, alas, even a moment's relaxation sealed my defeat. As the results came in, I found myself lacking compared to my former prowess, and certainly outshone by the current brilliance of Jean Wong. Once seated in the driver's seat, he smirked and declared, "Brother, you lost." He resembled a child, reveling in his victory over me. I responded, "Indeed, I lost. What shall be my forfeit?" "You'll find out shortly," he replied, confidently revving the engine as the car shot forward like an arrow. I contemplated what extravagant demand he might make. Should I acquiesce or refuse? Tonight, Jean Wong's demeanor left me uncertain. I furtively glanced at him. His expression was taut. Even the muscles in his jaw were clenched, clearly determined to win. What treasure could he be so fervently pursuing? To my surprise, Jean Wong did not adhere to the designated route, but instead drove to a villa atop the mountain. The roar of the engine pierced the night, halting abruptly at the entrance. Jean Wong exited, opened the passenger door for me, and made a gentlemanly gesture. "Brother, please step out." What trickery was this? SNT this a race? Why bring me here? Did you purchase this place? Disturbing the peace at such an hour was hardly wise unless it was his villa, in which case I would have to apologize profusely. However, I had no recollection of him acquiring this property. Wong nodded. Aren't you curious about the decorations for my birthday party? Come in and help me oversee it. This was a legitimate matter and I readily agreed. Just before entering, Wong suddenly grasped my wrist, his gaze intense. Brother, does this mean I won the race? Still fixated on this? I nodded, yes, it counts. You truly surpassed me. That's good to hear. For some reason, I felt that Wong's gaze held deeper implications. His pheromones wafted through the air, a scent that was becoming increasingly familiar. Why was he so excited about winning? And why did his pheromones spiral out of control when he was agitated? I would need to have Fong Li address this later. But when the door swung open, I was left speechless. The walls were adorned with photographs of me. There were images of me at work, lounging on the sofa, conversing with others. Some showed me in formal attire, others depicted me in loose clothing with messy hair. There were shots of me laughing heartily, others of me expressionless, and some with my brow furrowed in thought. I stood frozen, enveloped in silence. Wong placed a hand on my shoulder, softly asking, Brother, did I arrange it well? Nonsense. My face flushed slightly, and I belatedly countered, Stop it. It's your birthday. This isn't appropriate. My voice trembled, for I was frightened. I wondered, from where had Wong procured these photos? I spoke firmly, take them down. Yet Wong dismissed my command, tightening his grip on my wrist, nearly pulling me into his embrace, whispering in my ear, but I think it looks wonderful. He gazed at the photographs with an enamored expression, speaking to himself, that one was taken when you just secured a major deal. You looked so happy, and it brought me joy too. That one was when someone on your team messed up, and it upset you. Seeing that made me feel distressed. Oh, and this one, you had just taken an inhibitor and looked a bit dazed. Thankfully Fong Li captured it. Otherwise, I wouldn't get to see my adorably dazed brother. The more he spoke, the more animated he became, and this one is enough. I couldn't help but interrupt. What exactly are you trying to say? Why had he brought me here? What was the purpose of these remarks? Wong's hand slowly wandered down to my waist. Even through the fabric, I could feel the heat radiating from him. Wong chuckled softly. Brother, why are you trembling? Aren't you well aware? What do I want? You want me. Suddenly, Wong lowered his head and bit down hard on the nape of my neck. You've lost your mind. I pushed him forcefully, but all I felt was an even fiercer grip. My pheromones spiraled out of control, filling the air with a citrus scent. I attempted to suppress him with my pheromones, yet his overwhelmed me. It was intense and primal, flourishing wildly. Wong repeatedly licked the spot he had bitten, and after a moment, he grew unsatisfied, shifting his lips to my gland. I could easily guess that area was now a furious shade of red. He rubbed against it a few times, his voice husky. Brother, I want to bite. I pushed him away with all my strength, breathless. No, this was utterly absurd. Wong, you can't. Aren't you also? Wong seized my chin, forcing me to meet his gaze. Brother, I like you too. We were mere millimeters apart, our breaths intertwining in heated waves. That's still unacceptable. Wong's expression darkened abruptly. After a few moments of silence, he gently embraced me. The intensity of his pheromones softened, imbued with a hint of tenderness. I allowed him to hold me in silence. I lost track of time, until Wong suddenly lowered his voice, sounding rather forlorn. But brother, I'm feeling quite distressed. Besides, I won. He released me, and I caught a glimpse of the despondency in his eyes, which glistened with unshed tears, rendering him a pitiful figure. I could empathize with the pain of his unfulfilled desires. Ultimately, unable to bear it any longer, I sighed, loosened my collar, and turned to reveal my gland, saying, Go ahead, bite. For my own brother, I would pluck the moon from the heavens if he wished it. Wong did not hesitate. He bit down, and the momentary jolt nearly shattered me. The pain was excruciating, akin to 100 ants gnawing at my heart, intertwined with an undeniable longing. The desires I had previously suppressed with medication surged forth like an unstoppable tide, threatening to annihilate me completely. Brother, may I mark you? He asked. I could only manage a bitter smile, replying, it would be futile. How could I be marked? Why was I not like others? Wong was resolute, insisting, How would you know if you don't try? He poured in his pheromones with fervor, enveloping the entire villa in an overwhelming scent of tequila and lemon. It wasn't until midnight that he finally ceased, and I lay exhausted in his embrace. "Jean Wong, happy birthday," I murmured. He released a pheromone that would allow me to sleep peacefully and pressed a kiss to my forehead, saying, "Brother, sweet dreams." With that night, my life became a tapestry of beautiful dreams. Extra, Jean Wong's perspective 1. I am unwell. I have feelings for my brother. When I first realized this thought, it felt as if the world had collapsed upon me, for my brother seemed utterly beyond the possibility of being marked by me. We are both bound by this fate. No matter how I might rebel, I could never escape the grasp of my brother's hand. Yet, I truly adore him. Whenever I am in his presence, I cannot contain the overflow of my pheromones. I suspect I am infatuated with the scent of lemons. I bought a truckload of lemons, only to find them bitter. Unlike my brother, who possesses a delightful fragrance, enticing and irresistible. As I turned 18, my feelings became increasingly uncontrollable. My brother took me to his company, insisting I sit beside him to study every day. But, oh, how intoxicating his scent was. My mind strayed from the documents, my gaze inevitably drifting toward him. Clad in a suit, he appeared even more captivating than usual. The longer I stared, the more unbearable it became. My glands felt as if they would burst. Before my pheromones spiraled out of control, I stood up and fled without looking back, declaring, "I don't want to stay here. I won't come again." My brother had always cared for me. My absence mattered little. Yet, as time passed, I grew restless, unable to see him. I sought solace in beautiful, obedient companions, yet no matter their efforts, they could not dislodge the image of him from my mind. That lemon scent seemed to take root in my heart. I fell in love with the thrill of late-night racing, where, in the rush of speed, I could momentarily forget my brother. Yet, once the exhilaration faded, my longing for him intensified. Thus, I committed a foolish act. I installed surveillance in both my home and his office. My brother had always been unguarded around me, so it was an easy task. I contemplated placing a camera in his bedroom, but fear of discovery held me back, complicating matters. I reassured myself that it was acceptable to see less of him. However, I never anticipated witnessing him on my own surveillance footage. I was unprepared to see him clutching my shirt, asleep on my bed. Even more astonishing was the sight of him, in a half-dazed state, shedding his clothes to don mine. His lips moved as if he were speaking in his sleep. I could not interpret his murmurs, but he appeared to be in a deep slumber, his typically stern face softened by an indescribable tranquility. Yet I could find no peace. Just days prior, I had made a reckless declaration that my brother would have to beg for my return. The moment the words left my lips, regret washed over me, and I longed to sprout wings and fly back to him. Fortunately, when I returned, he was still there. I quietly lay beside him, but the night was serene, and the subtle lemon scent was almost palpable. In a moment of weakness, I bit into the nape of his neck, inadvertently waking him. Flustered and anxious, I turned away, fearful he might see the desire written across my face. Once I composed myself, I fabricated an excuse to brush past the incident. My brother teased me about not returning on my own accord. I laughed, "Are you sure you didn't beg me?" But as I watched him revel in my pheromones on the surveillance, I convinced myself he was indeed pleading for me. 2. I sought out Fong Li. My brother had mentioned his prowess, so I wanted him to examine my condition. To my surprise, Fong Li wore a peculiar expression, as if he were grappling with his words. After a prolonged silence, he finally spoke. "What affliction plagues each member of the Jean family?" I learned of my brother's plight. Turned out he was also drawn to me. I found amusement in the notion that it was a familial trait. However, anxiety soon crept in, for it seemed my brother would never be with me. Fong Li mercilessly administered a syringe of medication, coldly instructing, "Control your pheromones, and stop provoking your brother." Confused, I asked, "Why tell me when he asked you to keep it secret?" Fong Li replied solemnly, "Because he is truly suffering. Years ago, the medication was inadequate, and each injection left him in agony. Yet, you, a fool, flaunted your pheromones, competing with him, exacerbating his condition and necessitating increased dosages." He showed me a photo from years past, where my brother gazed blankly at a wall. Sadness washed over Fong Li's face, revealing the depth of my brother's suffering. "Jean Wong, do not let your brother endure such pain." I vowed to avoid encounters with him as much as possible. Yet, upon learning of his feelings, my imagination spiraled. Did my brother truly love me? Blinded by desire, I committed a grave error. I procured a companion who resembled me and sent them to my brother's room. I knew he would take the bait, as they bore a striking resemblance to me. But upon witnessing him ushering someone into his room, I could not suppress the jealousy that ignited within me, a seething rage. How could someone simply because of their appearance be with my brother? He was mine. I stormed to the door, only to realize I lacked the courage to knock. What could I accomplish by knocking? Would I demand him to send the person away? And if he did, what would that change? I chuckled bitterly, and just then, the door swung open. I beheld my brother and the tear-streaked face of the other. My brother cast the intruder out. He frowned, chastising me for my antics. But whose pheromones were truly out of control? My brother lost all restraint, pulling me into an embrace, burying his head in my neck. I dared not move. My brother had truly lost his mind. For a fleeting moment, I yearned to pull him inside and mark him repeatedly, to claim him as my own. Even if it were a futile endeavor, it would still be preferable to the long, lonely nights where I could only confront my desires through his photographs in the mountainside villa. Yet, I knew that would anger him. Even in my yearning, I could not act while he was in such a muddled state. Sighing, I withdrew the medication I always carried and injected it into him. I then personally took him to Fong Li. Fong Li was taken aback. "Oh, you managed to bring him over in one piece. Not too beastly of you." In truth, I had not wished for it to come to this. But what choice did I have? My brother lay on the hospital bed, his complexion pale, devoid of any color in his lips. I suddenly yearned to shatter the boundaries of our forbidden relationship. I longed to be with my brother, to be in the role of a lover. I asked Fong Li, if I support the Jin family, will he stop overthinking? For so long, he had sheltered me from the storms of life. If I could provide him with a sense of security, would he not feel lighter? Would he not be willing to be with me? I proposed this audacious idea, and Fong Li shook his head, yet ultimately provided me with medication that could leave one lethargic, cautioning, "Do not administer too much at once." I had mentioned before, my brother had always been defenseless against me. I successfully infiltrated the company, mimicking my brother's approach to handling affairs. He praised my efforts, to which I replied, "It is all thanks to your guidance." He insisted he had not taught me at all. Only I am privy to the captivating image of him strategizing in his office, as captured by the surveillance. After tirelessly working for half a month, my brother appeared increasingly at ease. On the eve of his birthday, I resolved to break the ice. I playfully insisted that he grant me a favor. Naturally, my request was for him. He has always been unable to bear my sorrow. With just a hint of vulnerability, he readily acquiesced to my whims, allowing me to indulge in my desires. I bound his hands with a chain of collarbones and declared, "Brother, I wish to mark you." He responded with a hint of reluctance. "It's futile. Permanent marking was not an option." Yet, I remained unconvinced. Thus, the aroma of tequila and lemon intertwined throughout the night. Even when the fragrance may fade, I could always replenish it. My brother wished me a happy birthday. I inquired about his sleep, to which he replied that it was splendid. I smiled. "Brother, I will ensure you have sweet dreams for a lifetime." The end. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and give a like to support. Until we meet again in the next story.